All right, guys. Thank you. Hello. How's it going? Welcome to the Overcoming Life YouTube channel. For those of you guys who don't know, I started on TikTok and started to branch off into some other platforms. I do have a podcast, and I'm pretty sure the link will probably be in the bio. Um, so I'm excited to get this YouTube channel on the road. We are going to be starting with something that's very simple. We're talking about God's promise to you. And the point being that God made a promise to you and everyone who has ever lived on earth. Did you know that? If you didn't know that, well, now you know. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that promise and exactly what it is and what the difference is between our promises to God and God's promises to us. So, in the days of Noah, as seen in Genesis chapter 9, verse 17, God made a promise with Noah and with all flesh. He said, This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh on earth. It is him and all flesh on earth. And so if we go ahead and go to that verse, we'll read in Genesis chapter 9. We'll find something cool. So obviously, if you guys remember, God flooded the whole earth because men were wicked, and there were also giants in the land that were not good people either. And again, so it says in verse 15, it says, "And I will remember my covenant, which is between me, you, and every living creature because of the bow and the cloud. And never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. Never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the cloud, then I will look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." And the first thing that comes up to my mind and might come to yours is, well, is he really talking about all men in this situation? Well, of course he's talking about all flesh, but I feel that some naysayers might say, well, he destroyed it. He won't destroy it again by water, brother. See, you got to look at the content. You got to really look at the fine details of it. And the way that I understand this is the point is not about how he would find another way to destroy. See, man, that's how man thinks. The flesh looks to destroy. The flesh, the one who sows to the flesh will reap from the flesh destruction. The flesh's end is destruction. But God's not of the flesh, of course. God is spirit, and those who worship him, honestly, they worship him in spirit and in truth. So, God being a spirit and not a man, he is not looking for other ways to destroy flesh, guys. But the focus is on the fact that he will not destroy his creation again. That is not his purpose. That is not his intent. That is not his plan. That is not in his heart to do. And so the promise and the covenant that he made was that he would not destroy all flesh. Not that he's going to find another way to destroy flesh. All right. So does God make oaths? Does God make promises to people? Because we are told in the scriptures, as men, we are told, you shouldn't swear by the hairs of your head or anything else because there's nothing you can control. Because we don't have the ability to keep our oaths. And we're going to find that out right here. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 14 and 15, and a little bit before that, we find out that God makes another covenant. And he kind of clarifies this first covenant that he had made with Noah. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, I'm actually going to read in verse 12, which says, "That you may enter into the covenant with the Lord your God, and into his oath which the Lord your God is making with you today, in order that he may establish you as his people, and that he may be your God, just as he spoke to you, and just as he spoke to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." In verse 14, he says, "Not with you alone am I making this covenant and this oath, but both those who are standing here with us today in the presence of the Lord and those who are not with us here today." So I know that I wasn't there back in that day, and probably you weren't too, I'm guessing. Pretty good guess. You probably weren't there either. So because of that, we have to understand that this oath applies also to us. That is to say, this oath or this promise that God is making is that he will establish you today as his people, and that he may be your God. That God wants you to be his people, and he wants to be your God, and he is going to make that happen. This is his promise and his oath. That is what he did. God bound himself to an oath. He bound himself to this oath. And that is an amazing thing, because whatever God binds himself to, whatever he makes an oath for, it's going to get done. So here's what God did not say. He didn't say, if you are good, then I'll make you one of my people. If you can do all these things, then I will make you my people. He didn't say, if you can do all these things, and if you are good, and if you can live this certain way, then I will give you the opportunity to be my people, and then I will be your God. No. God made an oath. He made a promise. He made it on his own terms, by his own will, his own intention, his own desire, and his own strength. He did it alone. And he made this oath with us. And not only them, but he made it with us. So we have to understand the difference between God's oaths to us and our oaths to God. When we make promises versus when God makes promises. And these are called these covenants. We're going to be talking about the two covenants right now. So the first covenant is this. It's when we make a promise to God. The second covenant, very simply, is this. When God makes a covenant and a promise to us. So the first covenant is when you make a promise to God. And the second type of covenant is when God makes a promise to us. Now, the one who has made the promise, this is the person who is responsible to keep it. They are the ones who are responsible for it, to keep it. Now, back in Exodus chapter 19 with Israel, Israel made a promise to God. And in fact, if we read there a little bit in Exodus chapter 19, we find God speaking to Moses, and God says this. Exodus chapter 19, verse 8. Yes, verse 5 actually. Now then, if you indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be my own possession among all my peoples. For all the earth is mine. And you, verse 6, shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the sons of Israel. So God was speaking these things to Moses to tell to the people, if you can do these things, then we can have fellowship, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, my own possession among the peoples, if you can do this. So God asked the people to make a promise to him. Unfortunately, no matter how well-intentioned they were in saying, yes, we will do it, because they do say that. In verse 8, all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. Of course, they were well-intentioned. Of course, they had good hearts. Of course, they thought that they were doing the right thing. And they were certainly doing the right thing. But 40 days later, they failed to keep it. And they continue to fail to keep it. No matter how much God had told them, hey, this is what's going to happen. There will be good things for you. There will be good blessings for you. They still fail to keep it. So how did God solve this problem? Well, God solved this problem by doing this one thing. God instead makes his own promise. A promise because he knows that he can keep it. He knows that he can fulfill it. And God not only has good intentions, but he also has the ability to keep his promises. You guys understand that God is sovereign and the creator over all things. And so whatever he says gets done. There's nothing that he says and promises that he won't fulfill. It's impossible for God not to fulfill his promises. So, does God, keeping his promises to make us his people and for him to be our God, does that override our free will? That's a great question. See, God can save, and he has the ability to save all mankind. Yet, many people today, even in the church, God-fearing and God-believing people, well-intentioned, they believe that he cannot override their free will. They say that man can do whatever he wants. Man's will is free, but God's will is limited. They say the devil can make you do things, but God, he cannot. In fact, the modern church and its teachings have put major limitations upon God. And specifically, they have put major limitations upon his sovereignty. God, when he makes a promise, plans to fulfill it. Now, the question is he really able to? Well, why? Why would God make a promise that he cannot keep? Why would he say that I will make you my people and I will be your God? Why would he make a promise if he cannot keep it? He wouldn't. He didn't. He hasn't. He always fulfills his promise. See, God cannot make promises that he cannot keep, because then that would make him no better than us. It would make him no better than a man. In fact, that would make him a liar, and it would make him not God. He would fail to be God if he ever failed to keep his promise. The only thing that he asks is that we believe that he is able to keep his promises. Our faith is not in our ability to keep his promises. Our faith is in his ability to keep what he has promised for us and for his people. When we believe that he is able to keep his promises, this is what is called faith. So the question is, who is responsible? Who in this situation is responsible to keep their promise? Because we know we can't. I cannot keep my promise. I've tried many times to keep my promise to God. God, if you get me out of this situation, God, if you do this for me, then I will never do that again. I won't do this again. I won't say that again. I won't look at that again. But time and time again, no matter how well-intentioned I was, I always fell short. I always fell short of keeping my promise to God. When I'm responsible to keep my promise to him, I fail miserably. Now God, when he is responsible to keep his promise to you, that he would be your God and that you would be his people, the question is, do you have faith in his ability to keep his promise? And I think that's about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. We are going to continue in part 2 of God's promise to you and talking about how God, it's up to him to save us. It's according to his will, his purpose, his plan, his desire, and his intent. And I hope that you guys can keep following, subscribe, comment down below what you thought about this teaching, and we will get into part 2 in our next YouTube episode and in our next just episode in general. Blessings to you guys, and we shall see you next episode. I'm going to end with a prayer. Father, thank you so much for what you've done. Thank you so much that you are able to keep your promises. Even when we are not faithful, you remain faithful. I thank you so much that you have the ability to do all things and that you cannot fail when you do them. And that when your word goes forth that says that we will be your people and you will be our God, then that means you intend to keep that promise for all creation and for all those who are living, that they shall be your people and you shall be their God. And if you believe this and if you agree, say amen. I'll see you guys on our next episode.